Chapter 423. Wu Zhongkong and Demon Emperor made their way toward Tang Daodu with ferocious looks on their faces. Don't come any closer. Tang Daodu trembled uncontrollably as she sensed the bone-chilling killing intent emanating from Wu Zhongkong and Demon Emperor's bodies. Cold sweat was pouring down her back, and her body was already trembling uncontrollably due to excessive fear. You deserve this. Looking at the trembling Tang Daodu in front of him, Wu Zhongkong didn't say anything. He walked to Tang Daodu's left side and lightly scraped the ice blade in his hand. A thin slice of meat hung from Tang Daodu's arm. It hurts. It hurts so much. Good man, give me a quick death. As the blade descended, Tang Daodu felt the intense pain from the wound, as well as that incomparably terrifying chill that seeped into her bones. Tang Daodu's face instantly turned the color of a pig's liver as she crazily begged for mercy. During her tens of thousands of years as a god, Tang Daodu had lived a life of luxury, and her mind had been corrupted. How could she possibly withstand such terrifying torture? I'll give you a quick death. Today you'll die in agony. A sinister smile appeared on Demon Emperor's face upon hearing Tang Daodu's pleas for mercy. He made his way over to Tang Daodu's side and sliced off a slice of flesh from Tang Daodu's right arm before swallowing it. While the two of them were attacking, Holy Spirit Deloyali wasn't just standing around. She was trying to staunch Tang Daodu's bleeding to prevent him from dying too quickly. This was equivalent to the Do continent on Earth, where there was soul power, so this dismemberment was undoubtedly even more effective. For someone like Holy Spirit Deloyali, even if Tang Daodu were to be dismembered to the point where only his brain remained, she would still be able to keep him alive and continue to experience pain. Just like that, Wu Zhongkong and the Demon Emperor began to execute the punishment of death by 1,000 cuts on Tang Daodu. Unknowingly, an entire morning had passed. Under the combined efforts of Wu Zhongkong and the Demon Emperor, every inch of flesh, tendons, and even nerves on Tang Daodu's palms, forearms, and upper arms were completely removed. All that was left was a pair of bare bones. During this time, Tang Daodu had groaned in pain countless times, which made the Devil Emperor feel very happy, as if he had gotten his revenge. At the same time, the X-shaped execution platform where Tang Daodu was standing was also raised because Wu Zhongkong and the Nephilim Emperor were about to dismember Tang Daodu's legs. As for Yao Xian, she had already left, leaving the execution ground to Wu Zhongkong and the Demon Emperor. Wu Zhongkong and the Nephilim Emperor showed no mercy as they looked at Tang Daodu, whose face was filled with pain. There was no need for pity for scum like him. He didn't deserve even the slightest bit of pity. Thus, another afternoon passed by, and Tang Daodu's legs had been completely dismembered, leaving not a single shred of flesh behind. As for the discordant thing, it had been personally sliced into pieces by the Nephilim Emperor. Of course, she didn't eat that disgusting thing this time. Instead, she burned it to ashes with her soul power. In the blink of an eye, night had already fallen. At this time, Tang Daodu's limbs were reduced to bones, and only her upper body remained. However, under the treatment of Holy Spirit Loyali, Tang Daodu was still brimming with energy and vitality, so she had no choice but to enjoy the torture. On this occasion, Wu Zhongkong and the Nephilim Emperor cut down Tang Daodu's neck, while the Nephilim Emperor cut down Tang Daodu's waist, and the Nephilim Emperor cut down what was left of Tang Daodu's body. Tang Daodu's body and internal organs were disappearing piece by piece, leaving only her skeleton behind. However, at this time, Tang Daodu's brain was still alive, and it was experiencing extreme pain and cold stimulation. Finally, after an entire night and an entire morning, Tang Daodu's upper body had been reduced to a skeleton, and all of her internal organs and flesh had disappeared. At this point, it was finally time for the final part of her body, which was her brain. As long as her brain wasn't damaged, Holy Spirit Doyali's treatment would ensure that Tang Daodu wouldn't die. Hence, Wu Zhongkong and the Nephilim Emperor continued to work together, cutting down Tang Daodu's face from left to right. Finally, another hour passed. At this point, All that was left of Tang Daodu was her brain. All of the flesh on her face and neck had been removed, and the execution was drawing to a close. Seeing as you hate this bastard so much, why don't you end it yourself? Wu Zhongkong said in an indifferent voice as he turned to the Nephilim Emperor. Even though he didn't like the Holy Spirit cult, Wu Zhongkong didn't say anything since the Nephilim Emperor had already pledged allegiance to him, and Long Bing had already been resurrected. Thank you. The Nephilim Emperor immediately raised Tang Daodu's skull before hurling it viciously toward the ground. Slap! When she landed on the ground, Tang Daodu's skull instantly shattered. The brain tissue inside also turned into a lump of white, like a lump of thick porridge. She was deader than dead. Thus, Tang Daodu's fifth subsoul was dead. Chapter 424. Chariot Dismemberment, also known as Five Horses Dismemberment or Five Bulls Dismemberment, was a form of torture that originated from Earth. During the execution of chariot dismemberment, the head and limbs of the victim would be tied to 5 different chariots. Then, the chariots would be tied to horses and pulled in different directions. Under the immense strength of the horses, the human body would be torn into 5 pieces. Hence, it was also known as chariot dismemberment. During the process of chariot dismemberment, the victim would be subjected to immense pain and torture. Furthermore, the victim would lose his life amidst the excruciating pain. Today, Tang Daodu, or more accurately, Tang Daodu's 7th subsoul, would personally witness how cruel this punishment was. 9 a.m. in the morning, on the execution ground, under the escort of 2 executioners, Tang Daodu was placed in a prisoner's carriage and brought to the center of the execution ground. Then, the 2 executioners tied Tang Daodu's hands behind his back and threw Tang Daodu's body in the center of the execution ground like a dead dog. Then, one of the executioners pressed Tang Daodu's body firmly against the ground while the other one put chains on Tang Daodu's legs. As for what these chains were connected to, they were not ordinary horses or chariots. Instead, they were connected to several soul guidance cars, which could provide more power. Don't execute me. I don't want to die. Looking at the chains and soul guidance cars around him, Tang Daodu could already foresee his tragic, and even though he had never heard of chariot dismemberment before, he couldn't help but cry and shout. Facing Tang Daodu's cries, the 2 executioners ignored him. Instead, they untied Tang Daodu's hands. Tang Daodu wanted to struggle, but one of the executioners had already knelt down on one knee and pressed Tang Daodu's chest firmly against the ground, giving him no chance to move at all. As for the other executioner, he put the chains on Tang Daodu's hands and neck and fastened them tightly. Reporting to the Realm Lord, the criminal Tang Daodu has been brought here. Please give the order to execute him. After securing Tang Daodu, the 2 executioners stood at attention and reported, "Execute." Hearing the executioner's words, Yao Xian calmly ordered, "Yes." Hearing Yao Xian's order, the 2 executioners came to a control panel and pressed a red button on the left and right respectively. Immediately, the 5 driverless cars that had stopped started up at the same time. Furthermore, they moved very slowly in 5 different directions. No, I don't want to die. Tang Daodu. Of Tang Daodu. Of Tang Daodu. Of Tang. Of Yao of God. Of Tang Dao to Tang. As Tang Duof Tang. The 2 executioners didn't pay any attention to Tang Daodu's cries. Instead, they just looked at Tang Daodu silently. At the same time, the soul guidance cars on both sides were still moving slowly and steadily. This slow driving was to let Tang Daodu suffer the greatest pain. Otherwise, it would be meaningless if Tang Daodu died in an instant. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 1 minute. At this moment, the chains on Tang Daodu's limbs had been tightened. Tang Daodu was suspended in the air and was enduring a huge pulling force and pain. Tang Daodu felt as if his body was about to be torn apart. He screamed crazily and his face was full of pain. His pants were completely covered in feces and sticky. As time passed, the soul guidance cars continued to drive into the distance. Kacha! 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 Accompanied by a few cracking sounds, the bones in Tang Daodu's limbs were broken. His muscles were under an even greater pulling force. His tendons and bones were torn apart. Tang Daodu almost fainted from the pain. Another 10 seconds passed. Because her bones were broken, Tang Daodu's ability to withstand pressure decreased even further. In addition, the tendons in her body had already been torn to the point where they were no longer in shape. Finally, one of her arms was forcefully torn off and fresh blood gushed out. Following that was the other arm and both legs. At this point, Tang Daodu had become a human swine. He had no limbs. Although he was still breathing, he was already on the verge of death. Execute him. Looking at this, Yao Xian waved his hand. The soul guidance car that was tied around Tang Daodu's neck suddenly accelerated. It dragged Tang Daodu's neck and drove forward. Gotcha! Under the huge force, Tang Daodu's neck was instantly broken. His head drooped to the side, and he completely lost his last bit of vitality and life. At this point, Tang Daodu's seventh subsoul was dead. Chapter 425. On the huge execution ground, Tang Daodu's eighth split soul, referred to as Tang Daodu here, was brought up. The punishment that he was going to receive today was the legendary torture, human swine. The executioner pushed Tang Daodu to the center of the execution ground. There were all kinds of torture instruments beside him, and there was also a large earthen jar. No, don't kill me. Seeing the torture instruments in front of him, Tang Daodu's body started to tremble. He lost control of his bladder and excreted as he screamed crazily. Go ahead and scream. You won't be able to scream very soon. Hearing Tang Daodu's miserable shriek, the executioner said coldly. Soon after, he dragged Tang Daodu on the ground as if he was carrying a dead dog. In the end, he threw her onto the execution platform. Then, the executioner took a sharp saw from the torture platform next to him, aimed at Tang Daodu's arm, and chopped it off. Crack! With a crisp sound, Tang Daodu's right arm was chopped off. Blood gushed out, and he screamed in pain. Of course, the executioner would not let Tang Daodu die so easily. Then, he took out a bottle of black medicine and sprinkled it on Tang Daodu's wound. Immediately, a layer of black scab formed on the wound, and the bleeding stopped. Then, the executioner did the same thing and removed all 4 of Tang Daodu's limbs, leaving only a human stick. Go in. With a cold smile, the executioner opened the earthen jar next to him and placed Tang Daodu's body inside, leaving only his head exposed. Then, the earthen jar was closed again. No! Having lost all 4 of his limbs, Tang Daodu screamed in agony as he was transferred into the earthen jar. Too noisy. So unpleasant. A cold light flashed in his eyes. The executioner poured a bottle of red medicine into Tang Daodu's mouth and poured it down his throat. Instantly, Tang Daodu's vocal cords were corroded by the dark medicine. He could not speak at all and could only whimper. You don't need that tongue of yours anymore. He took out a sharp knife and cut Tang Daodu's mouth. Tang Daodu's tongue fell out. Then, the executioner continued to stop the bleeding on Tang Daodu's body. Next, it's your eyes. With a cold smile, the executioner took out a torture instrument that looked like a ladle with sharp edges and walked to Tang Daodu's body of torture. At this time, Tang Daodu's as Daodu could not scream and could only look at the executioner with fear in his eyes. The executioner held the torture instrument in his hand and inserted it into Tang Daodu's eyes. Then, with a twist and a pull, Tang Daodu's eyeballs were dug out, leaving behind 2 deep, hideous pits that were bleeding profusely. Then, the executioner poured the black medicine into Tang Daodu's eyes to stop the bleeding. Next, it was Tang Daodu's ears. The heated copper wire was inserted into Tang Daodu's ears and pierced through Tang Daodu's ears, causing him to lose his hearing. Then, Tang Daodu's nose was cut off, his ears were chopped off, his face was scratched, his eyebrows, hair, and eyelashes were all removed, and a special ointment was applied to destroy his hair follicles, preventing them from growing again. After all this, Tang Daodu's limbs were gone, and he had lost all his senses. All that was left was his body in the jar, but he was still alive. Then, Tang Daodu's body was sent to the latrine. Every day, someone would inject feces and urine into the latrine until Tang Daodu was completely submerged and drowned. At this point, Tang Daodu's eighth subsoul was dead. Chapter 426. Hanging was a punishment used to execute criminals who had committed the most heinous crimes. It wouldn't cause the victim to die quickly, but would instead cause the victim to die in a state of suffocation and despair. To Tang Daodu, who had committed a heinous crime, hanging was completely the most suitable punishment. At 10 a.m. in the morning, Tang Daodu had already been taken to the execution ground in a prison cart, and her identity had been verified. Immediately thereafter, she was escorted to the center of the execution ground by two executioners, Yun Ming and Yali. A tall gallows had already been erected there, and above it was a platform. There was a trap above the platform, while the platform was suspended in midair. "No, don't kill me. I don't want to die. Mistress Yao Xian, please spare my worthless life. I've already confessed to all of my crimes. I don't want to die." Tang Daodu was already unable to move as she stared at the gallows before her. Her legs were trembling uncontrollably, and she was murmuring to herself in a frenzy. "Shut up. A traitor like you deserves to die 10,000 times over, yet you're still begging for mercy. You clearly haven't realized your mistake. You deserve to be punished." When Yun Ming heard Tang Daodu's words, he couldn't help but get angry. He reached out and viciously slapped Tang Daodu across the face. A crisp sound rang out as Tang Daodu's right cheek was completely swollen. "Husband, it's time to put a hood over this criminal's head. That way, we won't have to see this disgusting face and hear such disgusting words." Meanwhile, Yali was also handing a black hood over Yun Ming's head in a thoughtful manner. Even though Yali Su Lai was known as the Holy Spirit de Law, she wasn't some holy mother. She didn't feel any pity for Tang Daodu, who was an innumerable villain, traitor, and traitor. "Yali is right." Yin Ming nodded upon hearing Yali's words. He took the balaclava from Yali and placed it over Tang Daodu's head before tightening it. "Now it's quiet." Yin Ming nodded in a pleased manner as he was no longer able to see Tang Daodu's scowling face. Immediately thereafter, a burst of soul power lifted Tang Daodu's body before placing Tang Daodu onto the gallows platform. Immediately thereafter, Yin Ming took the rope from the gallows before wrapping it around Tang Daodu's neck. Due to the fact that Tang Daodu's hands and feet were bound behind his back, there was no way for him to resist. No, I don't want to die." Feeling the rope around her neck, Tang Daodu's voice gradually became sobbing. Her body swayed left and right as if she was trying to break free from the rope, but it was futile. Reporting to the sector lord, the criminal Tang Daodu has been sent to the gallows, awaiting the sector lord's orders. After doing all of this, Yin Ming turned to Yao Xian and yelled, "Let's go. Begin the execution." Hearing Yun Ming's words, Yao Xian raised his right hand high into the air before slamming it down. "Yes, ma'am." After hearing Yao Xian's words, Yin Ming made his way over to the gallows platform before pressing the button to release the pedal. In the next instant, Tang Daodu's body began to droop downward, and the rope around Tang Daodu's neck was also pulled taut. All of a sudden, Tang Daodu felt as if she were unable to breathe. Her lungs were suffering from severe lack of oxygen, and her face began to turn red. Her consciousness gradually became blurry, and she was unable to control her own body. Soon, she lost control of her bowels and bladder, then lost consciousness. In the face of asphyxiation and lack of blood to her brain, Tang Daodu's life force was rapidly fading away. Finally, her head tilted to the side, bringing an end to the sinful life cycle of this subsoul. After that, Yali used her life force power to confirm that Tang Daodu had completely lost all signs of life and was dead. She then reported the results of the execution to Yao Xian. Thus, the second subsoul of Tang Daodu was dead. Chapter 427. On the execution ground. The gallows on which Tang Daodu had been executed had been removed, and a tall copper pillar had been placed in its place. This time, Yao Xian was going to execute Tang Daodu using the hot branding method, and this copper pillar was the tool used for the execution. The hot branding method wasn't a punishment from the Doloa continent. Instead, it originated from the Blue Star and was invented by King Zhou of the Shang dynasty. Yao Xian naturally wouldn't impose such a harsh punishment on ordinary criminals on the Doloa continent. But Yao Xian had no sympathy for Tang Daodu, the source of all evil and traitor to humanity. Even if she were to kill a criminal like Tang Daodu 100 times, she still wouldn't be able to vent her anger. Therefore, the hot branding method was perfect for her. The executioners in charge of executing Tang Daodu were Xie and Yuan and Yehue. They led Oxhead and Horseface out of the prison cart and escorted Tang Daodu to the copper pillar. What are they doing? Tang Daodu's eyes were filled with confusion as she stared at the copper pillar in front of her. You'll find out soon enough, you bastard. Xie and Yuan and Yehue chuckled coldly as they pinned Tang San to the copper pillar. They then wrapped his arms and legs around the pillar and bound him with steel ropes. Realm Lord, the criminal Tang Daodu is in place. Please give the order. Xie and Yuan and Yehue cupped their fists in salute as they turned to Yao Xian. Begin. Upon hearing Xie and Yuan and Yehue's words, Yao Xian tossed a red wooden tablet into the air, announcing the commencement of the execution. Understood. Xie and Yuan and Yehue revealed vicious expressions upon receiving Yao Xian's orders, and they opened the hole at the bottom of the copper pillar. There was already a pile of firewood that had been sprinkled with oxidizing agents and flammable materials. Xie pulled out a soul lighter from his spatial soul tool and lit the firewood in the pillar. Soon, a raging fire ignited within the copper pillar, releasing terrifying heat that quickly raised the temperature of the copper pillar. In less than 10 seconds, the temperature of the copper pillar had reached over 100 degrees, and Tang Daodu's skin was scorching hot. Tang Daodu was in excruciating pain, and she screamed in agony as she begged for mercy. Even though Tang Daodu's original body was a divine king, the body of this soul fragment used to execute the punishment didn't have the cultivation of a divine king. It was exactly the same as a mortal, so it naturally couldn't endure such a terrifying heat. It was burned to the point where its skin and flesh split open and fresh blood flowed. The blood was evaporated by the high temperatures, alleviating some of the pain that Tang Daodu was in, but she still screamed in agony as she begged for mercy. Her body twisted slightly as she tried to escape from the copper pillar, but she was completely immobilized by the ropes around her, and she could only endure the excruciating pain of being burned. In the face of such scorching temperatures, Tang Daodu's skin was quickly charred black and cracked open. Her flesh and blood were also melting away at a rapid rate, and her internal organs were also being heated up. Her vitality was quickly fading away. In less than a minute, Tang Daodu's head tilted to the side. He had completely and thoroughly stopped breathing. However, he wasn't put down. Instead, he continued to be tied to the copper pillar until his extremely ugly body was burned into a pile of charcoal. Only then did the execution end. At this time, Xie and Yuan and Yehue also announced to Yao Xian that the execution was complete. Thus, Tang Daodu's third soul fragment was dead. Chapter 428. Tang Daodu's fourth execution method was to be executed by shooting. The executioners were Hui Yuhao and Tang Wudong before they were reincarnated. After learning about Tang Daodu's disregard for their father-daughter relationship and the evil things that Tang Daodu had done to her and Hui Yuhao, as well as the countless crimes that Tang Daodu had committed in her life, Tang Wudong was also enlightened. She severed all ties with Tang Daodu and severed their father-daughter relationship. As for Hui Yuhao, he hated Tang Daodu's guts for forcing Wang Qiu to her death and for interfering with his relationship with Tang Daodu time and time again. He also hated Tang Daodu's various ways of ostracizing and suppressing him. Hence, he took the initiative to accept this mission. After arriving at the Sky Prison, Hui Yuhao and Tang Wudong personally took Tang Daodu away. After that, they personally escorted him to the execution ground. After being pushed down from the prison cart, Tang Daodu was so frightened that his legs turned to jelly. His arms were also trembling, and he couldn't even walk. Coward! You were so arrogant and bossy when you first treated me. Why have you become like this now? A look of disdain flashed across Hui Yuhao's eyes as he looked at Tang Daodu in front of him. He questioned him coldly. Son-in-law, I was blinded by greed back then and was deceived by the God Kings. That's why I committed such a huge mistake. Please, let me go. I don't want to die. Tang Daodu begged as he looked at Hui Yuhao in front of him. He sounded like he was about to cry. You still dare to call me your son-in-law. My Wudong has severed all ties with you. A person like you who has no sense of shame and only knows how to seek personal gain and throw the pot after eating is truly disgusting. After hearing Tang Daodu's words, Hui Yuhao was furious. He spat a mouthful of thick phlegm on Tang Daodu's face. After that, he used his soul power to seal Tang Daodu's mouth so that he couldn't speak anymore. After that, Hui Yuhao dragged Tang Du, who couldn't walk anymore, to the center of the execution ground. After that, he kicked Tang Daodu to the ground. After that, Hui wore a look of disdain as he put on a thick layer of gloves. After that, he grabbed Tang Daodu's collar and forced him to kneel on the ground. He was forced to kneel. Reporting to Realm Lord, the center Tang Daodu has already been brought over. Please give the order. Hui Yuhao cupped his hands in Yao Xian's direction. Carry out the execution. Yao Xian ordered with a cold glint in his eyes. Understood. After he finished speaking, Hui Yuhao retrieved a specially made soul gun from his spatial soul tool. After that, he stuffed the muzzle of the gun into Tang San's mouth. In normal executions, out of humanitarian considerations, a hood would be put on the criminal's head and the execution would be executed from the back of the head. However, when faced with Tang Daodu, this kind of innumerable bastard, there was naturally no need for any humanitarian considerations. Tang Daodu's eyes were filled with despair as he looked at the soul gun in front of him. He wanted to beg for mercy, but he couldn't. Wudong, you should spit on him too, Hui Yuhao suggested as he looked at Tang Daodu. Yes, my husband. After hearing Hui Yuhao's words, she didn't hesitate to spit on Tang Daodu's face. Goodbye. After seeing this, Hui Yuhao finally revealed a sinister smile. He pulled the trigger. Bang! A wisp of purple soul power flashed through the muzzle of the soul tool gun. A strong current of soul power shot out explosively, directly smashing Tang Daodu's head into pieces. Like a ball of red fireworks, it scattered in the air. As for that headless corpse, it also slowly landed on the ground. After a few flops, it completely lost all signs of life. At this point, Tang Daodu's fourth subsoul was dead.